You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 225 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden here with Pankaj. Bhojwani, as always, this week on the pod, we are talking how to qualify for the Pro Tour. Of course, Pro Tour Yokohama has been announced as the first Pro Tour for 2026. Almost had to just double check my years on the calendar there, Pankaj. The year's flown by so fast. 2026 Pro Tour Yokohama. We have a qualifying season coming up in October, only 8 weeks away. So this week on the pod, we want to take the opportunity with a bit of downtime between events as we head towards Super Slam, Guardian, Mastery Pack Guardian releasing this coming weekend as well. Want us to talk a little bit about, how to set yourself up to maybe finally punch that ticket to the Pro Tour if you're looking to get to your first Pro Tour, or maybe you're looking to get back on the Pro Tour after competing already and looking to make sure when it comes to Pro Quest season for Yokohama, you can snatch that invite, sew it up, and do everything you can to make sure you get back to the Pro Tour or to the Pro Tour for the very first time. With that said, Pankaj, how are you and how was your week in Flesh and Blood?
I'm doing well, and I just want to real quick talk about the Mastery Pack Guardian. It is Mastery Pack Guardian, that is the name. You were correct about the name last week. I believe I messed you up by saying Guardian Mastery Pack. I forgot what you said. I think I said. It was in the notes. I wrote the notes and I said the wrong thing, and then Hayden got really confused about the naming. It was really funny. I'm good. Yeah. My week in Flesh and my week in Flesh and Blood. I did some in-person CC practice.
Oh, nice.
Over the weekend. Trying to practice for Kansas a little bit. As much as I can. Honestly, haven't had that much time for Flesh and Blood, to be honest. So I'm not expecting too much from my performance in Kansas, but it'll be fun to get out there and play some games anyway. Other than that, been doing a little bit of spectating. Some people on the team are experimenting with Valda, and I will be tuned in this weekend for calling Auckland to see any shift in the CC meta that might have happened with Valda's release. It'll be interesting if there is. That was my week in Flesh and Blood. That's going to be my weekend Flesh and Blood. You are preparing for the calling this weekend, though. So what's your week been like?
Yeah, I literally fly out in 12 hours from now. Less than that, actually, 10 hours from now. So record this pod, head off to work, and then I fly out this evening. Yeah, you talk about in person, I'm holding up to the camera, so if you're an audio listener, I'm sorry, you're going to miss out, but you'll notice there's a Welcome to Wraith cards in my hand. I've been playing a little bit of Sealed as I get ready for the calling this weekend, trying to get at least a few games and refresh my memory. I've played a lot of Welcome to Wraith Limited, but 30 card limit I think changes a lot of things with this Welcome to Wraith Limited format, so trying to get my head around some of the aspects that introduces, just refresh myself on what Welcome to Wraith Limited looks like, and also, 6 years ago, I first heard about this game, literally almost to the day. And I went down to my local game store a couple of weeks later, and they had the Ira demo decks. That was all that was released at the time. Had no idea about. This is the craziest thing. I don't know how many people know this. So if you're a long-time Arsenal Pass listener, you would have heard this, I'm sure. But or if you're a long-time Flesh and Blood player, you probably know this. But the lore was that when this game was first sort of previewed, and you saw the Ira deck, you'll notice that if you play the Ira deck, there's not different pitch values of the same card in the Ira deck. So it was not known that there was cycles of cards when the game was first announced. So Welcome to Wraith finally has a preview season. You learn about all these different cycles of cards. And then 3 weeks later, I head along to the calling, first limited calling here in Australia. And the rest is history. But so now returning to Welcome to Wraith, of course, we had the farewell to Welcome to Wraith draft. But playing Welcome to Wraith Sealed has been... I've not done so in a very long time. So it's been fun to go back to my roots, so to speak, and just remember how much I enjoy Rainar and Bravo and Katsu.
Oh my god. Yeah, those are names we don't hear very often.
Not Dory.
Is it nostalgic?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is.
It nostalgic?
Definitely is. Yeah, it brings back a lot of memories, I think, of playing those first few events and trying to build my first few constructed decks in this game, and just remembering. I found a photo the other day of my first Dory deck that I built that I'd sent to a friend, and it was wild, man. It was pretty wild. I was playing Rainbow Flock of the Featherwalkers,
I missed that card.
Yeah.
It was a card that when I entered the game, only Chain was playing. When I just at the
and it wasn't even good.
beginning.
And it wasn't even good in Chain. I'll
Yeah,
stand by
I was
that.
like, man, there's something about the card. I just really like it though. Like I remember trying to make it work in Briar. There was a Lightning Lexi build, like a Lightning Lexi Death Dealer build that ran it, which is really cool because you gave it go again with the hero ability and stuff. So yeah, it's a cool card.
Very cool.
How do you feel in terms of applying your last few years of Flesh and Blood knowledge to Welcome to Wraith Seal now that you're going back to it? Like, do you feel like it's quite different and there's certain learnings that you maybe had before that you're revisiting and are realizing maybe you were wrong, or maybe certain cards you evaluate higher now than back before? Also probably because of the 30 card format. So what are those like differences, I guess, on a high level?
Yeah, honestly, not really, which has been interesting to me. I mean, there's definitely some things on card evaluation. I think that now being in modern Flesh and Blood, there's probably some synergistic interaction that maybe I missed the first time playing the Seal format that I think is more powerful, and probably just the fact that there's a lot more. I think when I first played Welcome to Wraith Sealed or Limited, even revisiting Welcome to Wraith 3 years ago now for the Fyendal Wraith draft events, I think I probably had a bit more black and white view on some cards, and I think, you know, learning more about the Limited format and how you can apply the use case of different cards, I think, and their varying levels of effectiveness depending on the deck and the sort of end games you might be trying to set up, these sorts of things. So yeah, honestly, not really though. I think this format is very fundamental Flesh and Blood, which is quite cool. The 30 card format that's the biggest impact, I think, though, for sure. It does change things a lot, and I actually think significantly for the better, which is interesting. So
also, I just realized we never did another Return to X. Right, we did Return to Welcome to Wraith, but we never did a return to like Arcane Rising or Return to.
There's a reason for that.
Anything else after
sucks.
that? Right? Sure, but like it just sounded like Return to X was maybe a thing they were trying to set up, and eventually were like, you know what, this isn't.
Well,
good
I
enough.
think Welcome to Wraith was the first ever set, right? And it went out of print effectively, and so they just did these farewell events to say goodbye. They released like a bunch of unreleased cold foil hero promos. So I don't think they necessarily needed to do that again, I guess. And honestly, I'm glad they didn't do it for Arcane Rising.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, that's been my week. I'm looking forward to getting to Auckland this evening. I have a Classic Constructor deck with me. If I end up, maybe I open a terrible seal pool. Maybe I'm a lot worse at this format than I thought, and I don't make day 2. So I have Arachne Slips Through the Cracks in my bag, ready to go. But otherwise, yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully drafting some alpha on this coming Saturday. That's the goal.
Yeah. Should we move on to the news?
Please.
Cool. So Mastery Pack Guardian is out this weekend. I think this pod's going to drop on Friday. Guardian Mastery Pack. Pack Guardian Mastery, even, if you will. Is out this weekend. So Valda is legal. Was she already legal? I don't know. She's legal, and there's a whole bunch of new cards. I guess we aren't talking about the meta in the main pod, so I'll just speak a little bit about Valda. I think she's shaping up to be stronger than perhaps I definitely gave her credit for looking into it. I think something that's surprising me is how, in a sense, self-sufficient she's turning out to be with regards to making seismic surges. That's the biggest, seeing it play in practice. Even when you do disrupt your opponent, you can still come to your turn with enough surges to continue doing your thing, which I thought would be one of her weaknesses, but she does have cards to alleviate that weakness. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Still gonna be interesting to see how much of an impact she has on the CC meta, and I'll definitely be tuned in to Auckland for that.
Yeah, I think I really like that shout out of how self-sufficient Valda is, because if you think about a hero, like Vincent, for instance, right, when that hero ability is very much at its best, for instance, absolutely just wrecking Prism's days, it's not like Valda is just reliant on, if my opponent doesn't draw cards, I'm never going to be able to, this hero becomes D grade sort of hero. Like, it's just not the case, I think, with the cards that we've seen. So yeah, I think particularly the cards we've seen in the back half of this preview window for Mastery Pack Guardian are very much the things that Valda was looking for. And I think we spoke about it last week, and I know you called this out last week, as Valda potentially being, probably the most interesting hero with what we'd seen so far already in terms of maybe the most playable Guardian heading into this next phase of Classic Constructed, or even as we head towards Super Slam. And I think it very much looks that way. I think if I had to put bets on it right now, I think Valda is shaping up to be a tier 1.5 to tier 2 hero. But I think I see circumstances where potentially the meta shifts, maybe a few things happen, maybe Super Slam introduces sort of a slightly different angle to the format, and all of a sudden Valda is firmly tier 1. So like a powerful hero ability. I think that's the thing at the end of the day. And so Valda is prime position to be very good.
Yeah. I'm not fully convinced about a Gravy matchup yet, just because Chum is...
Yeah.
Like, Gravy just has 3 time monks against her, right? So I think so far, I think at the initial stages, the Gravies are maybe finding themselves going 50-50 into Valda, or maybe struggling slightly. But as we've seen with Gravies so many matchups so far, I think once they practice a matchup and maybe adjust their game plans a little bit, I think I see that coming out Gravy's way. We'll definitely have to wait and see for that. Like, we started saying like Prism is favored into Gravy and Slippy is favored into Gravy, but like those things were definitely put to the test at Pro Tour and turned out to not be the case. Same with like Kasai. I think people are like, oh, Kasai is favored into Gravy. It turns out she's absolutely not. I could see the same happening for Valda. As I actually not just could see the same, that's what I'm expecting happen with Valda, but I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised to see if Valda can actually hold her own against Gravy once the Gravies are more practiced into it.
Pankaj just trying to rage bait me with the Slippy comment there.
I'm not rage baiting you. The stats say Slippy was not favored into Gravy at Pro Tour. It wasn't. Yeah.
Oh, I think it
was 50-50 across day 1 and day 2, but day 2 Gravies were favored, if I remember correctly. Okay. Because we're seeing that with Gravy. Actually, it's fascinating. The calling Gravies win rate was sub 50%. Pro Tour Gravies were like above 50%, and day 2 Pro Tour Gravies were even higher than that. So it really just goes to show how skill intensive the deck is, and how the better players were absolutely outperforming the players who didn't quite have that much practice on the deck.
Yeah, 50% at PT Arachne versus Gravy. So yeah,
that's across both days, right? And what if you just filter to just day 2? If you filter to just there's a way to filter on Fab Blazing to just day 2. Shout out again to Fab Blazing. I freaking love the website.
Very small sample size, I will say, on day 2, but it is Gravy favored. I think that matchup is very close. Yep. I think it's one of the closest matchups that exist in Blood right now. So which is good.
And my point is currently Valda seems to be in the this is close, but again, give the Gravy some time, and my expectation is that Gravy will come out firmly on top.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see, but we'll see. I think Valda is not going to be ultimately as well positioned as Slippy is into Gravy. Like, I don't think it's going to be a 50-50 matchup. I think probably if people solve it, it's more like maybe 40% for Valda. I don't know. We'll see if Valda can outmuscle the Gravies. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, which would be good, because I think she has a decent chance into Slippy, at least out of the decks that out of the decks that you can potentially play. I mean, she's a Guardian, right? Next in the news, Hayden's going to be in Auckland this weekend. So go say hi to him. Give him a command and cookout question on a piece of paper. Say hi and stuff. Bug him a little bit even. I'll be in Kansas next weekend, so come say hi to me as well. You can give me command and cookout questions on paper. Hayden has put up a Slippy deck guide up on the Patreon, so if you're a patron, go ahead and enjoy that. Is there anything you want to touch on that about?
I'm gonna put it up by the time this pod drops. It'll be up. This is what I'm gonna play this weekend. I mean, it's nothing like crazy super spicy, but I'm trying out a few different cards. I've cut. I'm not a big fan of. I think Savor Bloodshed. I really like that card, but I think heading into this current meta, especially with things like Valda and stuff potentially being around, it's not the most exciting card. So I've done a few things, tested a few things. So put up a effective my Cyborg guide for the weekend. If anyone's interested in that, maybe you're heading to Kansas next weekend. You want to get a glimpse at that.
Yeah, that card has been quite contentious. It's fascinating, that card in Slippy, because I feel like Slippy, like more than Mario, has a bit more of a... Like, they actually need to consider the number of mark payoffs they have. Like, their marking seems to be a lot more limited than Mario's. And so when you add Savor, it does sort of gut a little bit. It taxes your mark resource, if you will.
That's exactly how I put it.
Less of.
It's taxing to your mark.
Which is a very fascinating aspect of the card.
Yeah, the one thing for me is like if you look at a card like Take Up the Mantle, right? That card is so powerful, and especially in particular matchups. So there's matchups where you don't mind using your mark to save a bloodshed because you just need to, maybe you're just going fast, you want to draw the extra card, you want to just put out pure damage output. And then there's matchups where you need to disrupt, and Take Up the Mantle is one of the best cards for that. So in those matchups where you need to disrupt, the Save a Bloodshed is a liability / a card I don't want in my deck. And then in those matchups where I want to just deal pure damage, Save a Bloodshed is one of the best cards. So I think as things like Syndra and stuff start to drop off, and the matchups start to become maybe a little bit more grindy in some ways. People pack more defense reactions. People pack things like snag and stuff. I think I want to play longer games, want to block more, and I think I'm more interested in cards like Take Up the Mantle. So,
on the Arsenal Pass content side of things, the replay analysis with Shurei Wu's finals. If it's not out by the time this pod is out, it'll be out by a couple of days after. It'll be out sometime this week. So definitely go check that out. It's a banger of a finals, and we got the Pro Tour champ on, and it's his amazing insight. So go check that out. Skirmish Season 12 kicks off next weekend, and it's got Blitz, Living Legend, and I did not know this actually. It's got Mastery Pack Crack Shuffle Play as a format in Skirmish. Yep. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think go and check out fabtcg.com, the mothership, and you can see all the details for your Skirmish season. I can't believe we're 12 seasons into Skirmish. I remember playing, I'm just reminiscing on this pod. Maybe it's the Welcome to Wraith getting to me, but I remember playing the very first Skirmish season and busting out my Kano blitz deck and my Ira blitz deck and doing a bit of traveling around Australia because it was the first time that we'd had like an event that wasn't just an armory to go and play in a very long time just because of, things like COVID. So yeah, I mean, Skirmish season 12, crazy to say. But yeah, Crack Shuffle Play, there's more information on how that works at the Skirmish level. To be honest, I don't know many stores around me, for instance, that are opting to run that. I think a lot of them are choosing to run Living Legend because of just the push of that format from LSS. It seems to be quite popular right now. Of course, it's going to be a format at the World Championships this year in Philadelphia. So yeah, go and find what's happening near you. Get out to a skirmish. I'm going to try and go and play a Living Legend skirmish. I would like to play a bit of this format, see what it's like.
Yeah, a lot of my locals are also very, very interested in trying LL stuff. I think that's definitely the one that's getting the most excitement because it's clearly getting more attention from LSS, and yeah, it's going to be part of Worlds. Yep. So, yeah, that's it for the news. Should we move on to the Command and Cookout?
Let's do it. If you want to get your questions in for the Command and Cookout, you can do so. You can either drop them in the YouTube comments below if you are on YouTube here. If you're on Spotify, potentially an audio listener, you can drop them in the comments on Spotify, as we've had a few questions over the last few weeks on there. You can email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com, or if you see me or Pankaj in Kansas or Auckland over the next 2 weeks, you can pass us a message. You can say, hello Pankaj, I have a question for you right here, and you can hand him a piece of paper. Remember, put your name on it so remember who to shout out. Please do so. Or as I said, you can email us arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. This week's question comes from YouTube comment section. This is from Renrock1885. Command and Cookout question. What do y'all's Flesh and Blood collection look like? I know high-level players often need to be able to swap decks quickly, so I'm curious what that looks like from an organization and acquisition standpoint in your experience. Do you keep up with the master set, just the classes you enjoy? How are you sorting them, basically? This is the last part. I should have pre-read that.
I guess for me, I don't have a master set. I have just a bunch of decks from the past few sets of like heroes that I think I would enjoy or / enjoyed in like the deck brewing stage leading up to the release of the set. So then once the set drops, I'm like, hey, I know I want to buy into this hero. So for example, from High Seas, I have Marlin. I bought into Marlin. From like say years past, like I have Vincent, I have Dash.io, because I was like, ooh, these heroes seem interesting. I want to be able to play these heroes. And the way I've sorted them is really bad. I don't recommend the way I've sorted it. I basically just have a whole bunch of deck boxes for like each like class in a sense. I have like a Mechanologist deck box, a Wizard deck box, blah blah blah. And sometimes it spills out, so then I also have this other box that's just full of just random cards. It's really messy and bad, honestly. I would not recommend it. Go follow Hayden's way of sorting. I'm sure it's much better.
That's giving me anxiety, honestly.
It's not great. Every time I'm like, I need to go dig through like to find this card from Everfest or whatever. I'm like, oh my god, I need to go like try and find out where it is. And sometimes, some cards overlap between heroes, for example, like codexes or whatever. And like for now, I guess I moved from Assassin to Ranger back to Assassin or whatever. It's fine. I know exactly what the codex is, but there have been times in the past I'm like, oh my god, I don't remember which deck box that card was in. Oh yeah, like Battering Bolt, because I had Riptide, right? So I want to add Battering Bolt to Marlin, and I was like, I need to go find my Riptide deck box, like put the Battering Bolt. It's terrible. It's. Do
you at least label them, like the deck boxes?
I haven't yet, but I need to now because it's expanded. So now I was like, at first it was just like, I have like 5 deck boxes, and then that one like big cardboard box with a whole bunch of loose cards. But now I have like 10 deck boxes. I'm like, okay, I should start labeling them.
I'm going to break down each part of this question, or I guess, I think actually I might start with the high-level players needing to be able to swap decks quickly. I think that is sometimes true, but honestly, often you know what's in contention heading towards a Pro Tour. Like, you don't need to be taking every single deck with you to the Pro Tour or to a calling. There's very rare occasions where you rock up and someone's like, oh, I've broken the format, or actually the meta's changed so much that we need to be on this deck. Like, generally, you're going through testing and you're going to end up on one of the best decks, or you've been testing this kind of atypical way to approach the format, and so you're going to have most of the cards to play that. That's sometimes you get caught out where you might have a friend or a testing partner who's like, oh, this thing that we've been working on, like, I think it's a lot better than we thought. We've been able to solve X matchup. We need to find cards for everyone to be able to play this. It might be a hero that people just don't generally have collections for as well, right? But I would say generally when you head towards an event, people will either try and source the cards, they will either like buy them, maybe early on, open product, whatever, or they will know that they're going to a Pro Tour and they might ask locals or friends if they can borrow cards to make sure they've got those cards to build those decks for an event.
And I think that's another underrated aspect of being part of a team/testing group, just being able to borrow cards from each other. For example, for Pro Tour Singapore, my entire Slippy deck, I just lent it to one person on the team, where it was exactly what you're saying, Hayden. It was a couple of days before the event. Suddenly more and more of the team was convinced to play Slippy, and one of them didn't have the Slippy card, so I just like lent them my entire Slippy deck, and they could go play it at a Pro Tour. Someone else was like missing an Avophidia for one of their, I think, the Gravy decks or something, so I can like borrow mine kind of thing. And that's one underrated aspect of having teams as well, where you can share those cards. I mean, it's everyone knows the story of Michael Fung like lending Brody freaking Lexi, right, and then like winning the Pro Tour on Oldham, for example. But yeah, that happens a lot. Like, it's not just swapping decks and that you need to own the cards. Is a lot of it's also having people to rely on to borrow the cards.
Yeah. I mean, when it's challenging, for instance, as I know at PT London, for instance, basically our entire testing team played Aurora. Obviously, I didn't play. I was casting that one, but that's when it gets a little bit more challenging. But because that deck is so popular and it's maybe the best deck, like generally people are going to have the cards for that anyway, because they've been testing it, or they'll be able to get it from locals. So anyway, that's, I think, just something to note on that. The other piece, I would say, for my collection, so I used to keep up with, I used to honestly acquire every non-promo card in the game, non-foil. So I would have a playable set, effectively, of the set, so that I could play any deck at any time. I could go to my armory and decide that I want to play X deck and just have the cards for it, right? And not have to worry about things. Obviously, that's a massive luxury to be able to do that. I obviously invested a lot into the game up front. I would say that as the release of sets has changed, and we've also got more... We obviously at the start we had a real breadth of heroes and classes coming out, so I wanted to get the base pieces to those. But as we sort of get a bit more specialized, for instance, we get a set where it's like a talented Guardian or a talented Brute, for instance. Maybe I'm less interested in that specifically, or we get to a pirate set, and I'm like, okay, I don't really play Ranger very much, and it's a pirate Ranger. Do I really need to be acquiring these cards for Marlin, for instance, right? If I'm not particularly interested in playing that hero. So I think that's kind of how I've looked at it in the last couple of years. I've shifted from acquiring everything sort of... I also think now, like, honestly, like the retail price of product has gone up, and also some of the pull rates on things, it's just harder to get a master set. So I've just decided not to do that. So basically what I do generally now when sets come out is, if I think a hero is going to be a tier 1 hero, then generally I pick up all the cards for it if I have interest in it. And I will try and... So for instance, for Gravy was very popular out the gate, so I decided not to do it with Gravy because I thought I'd be overpaying for the cards, for instance, and I wasn't particularly interested in playing that much Gravy. And I was like, well, if I end up deciding to play it for Pro Tour, I'll either try and maybe borrow some of the cards, or I'll just bite the bullet and I'll just get them if I think the price is going to continue to go up. So I try and make a little bit of some smartish financial decisions on the cards I get, but generally just get the cards I want. I was never an assassin player, as you all know. I have a big... I wouldn't say a large loathing, but it's one of my least favorite classes, honestly, if not my favorite class. But obviously playing Slippy at PT, so then I had to acquire those cards that I just didn't have, like Bonds of Agony, for instance, because I just didn't play Assassin, right? So that's kind of what that looks like.
Slippy was very easy for me to put. Basically I was like, I obviously bought into new, and then well, from the hunted, Marinette was the hero that I was most interested in, so I bought the cards for Marinette.
You just have the deck.
But I don't have any Syndra or Fang cards. Then yeah, so Marinette and new cards, and the Slippy is just like in the intersection of those two, right? So kind of just have it.
Yeah, you just have it right.
Yeah, basically. So wait, so which hero did you buy into for high seas? Did you buy into none of them?
I actually, in the end, I did get a reasonable number of high seas cards. So I bought most of the pieces for Gravy from this set. But for instance, like I don't think I had a place at a Call to the Graves, for instance.
I see.
So I got most of the cards for Gravy. I got like Sea Legs because Brute card potentially. So picked up my Sea Legs, and I actually did get all of the Marlin cards because I was like, oh, actually, maybe I do want to play Marlin. They're getting dust.
She's fun.
Collecting dust over there.
She is fun. She just needs, yeah. I think I think we just need Gravy and Slippy to maybe come down a little bit, and I actually think she has a place.
Yeah.
So.
And nothing else powerful to be released.
Yeah, I guess. Unless it's an expansion slot card for Marlin.
Sure. That sounds good. And in terms of like organization standpoint, so I am not a big I'm not a massively organized person in my personal life, but I'm fairly organized. But what I do have a high emphasis on is being able to save time and efficiently be able to pull out a deck and build it up whenever I want to and be able to do it as quickly as possible. So my collection is fully sorted. So I have all my Majestics and Legendaries in folders sorted by the card order, like by, class, talent, etc., by set through folders. So I can flick to, my High Seas page with my Ranger cards and immediately grab out my 3 Harpoons, whatever, my Krakens, very quickly. And then when it comes to non-Majestics, Legendaries, Supers, I do have a long BCW box for every single, so an 800 count box or maybe 1,000 count box with all the commons and rares sorted by set code and of course color. So I can build up most decks in about 8 minutes generally. Just by going.
I feel personally attacked.
Yeah, I can literally go to my wardrobe to the right here, my closet on the right here. I can pull out my High Seas, commons and rares. They're all fully sorted in order. I pull out the cards, and then when I'm done with them, I just de-sleeve my deck and just put them back in. I will say though, when it comes to around Pro Tour or Tier 4 event time, I do pull out a lot of things in quick succession, end up with like a couple of stacks of cards. I have some right now that I have sorted back through. I'm holding them up for our viewers right now. I've sorted them back through, but I do need to now put them back into boxes. So
yeah, see, that's my problem. Like, that's my main problem, is the putting it back. I basically at some point got too lazy to put it back in the cardboard box, so that's why I just left it in all these deck boxes. Because I was like, for example, like new LL, right? And then I'm like, I'm going to unsleeve this entire thing and go find the correct place to put it. And it's like, whatever, she can just stay in a deck box. So she's just staying in a deck box. And when I needed the codexes for Marlin, I was like, cool, went back to my new deck box and took the codexes out of it, which is really bad because when you need to find from like older deck boxes, like, I don't know, for like Verd and stuff, I had to go find Skywars. I had to go dig all the way to like my Kano deck box. I was like, which one's the Kano one again? And then find the Skywars from it. It was horrendous. But yeah, that's the thing that always gets me. I was like, when the hero LLs, that's the biggest barrier for me. Like when I'm stopped playing the hero, is to put it back in the box.
You just gotta bite the bullet.
That's just way too much effort.
Yeah. I spent a weekend once because between I think Worlds in Barcelona and then what was after that Pro Tour LA, and then I didn't go to Amsterdam, and then I think Worlds Osaka last year. Like basically a year I didn't put back and sort back cards, and so I just spent a weekend like resorting everything. But it saves me so much time in the future, and also my collections are fully sorted, things back in binders, I can pull cards out for people, I can do all these things. So I should spend a weekend. It's a time investment. Sure. I've like thought about it. I'm like, oh, maybe this week I'll go do it, and I just never actually have the interest to actually go get that done. Although I do feel like I should maybe throw away some of my cards. Like you know how like when I early on started the game, I'm like drafting or whatever, and then I would keep a bunch of the cards. I'm like, oh, maybe one day I'll need them. But I feel like there's certain classes I know I'm probably like really never gonna play, and there's probably no point holding on to those cards. Like I have some like brute cards, I have some like illusionist cards. I'm like, I can probably just get rid of these as long as they're not like the commons and the rares. I mean, yeah, no, I feel remove them. I feel like the saying for me right here that fits is a stitch in time saves 9. I'm trying to a sorted deck, a sorted collection now saves me an hour pulling together a deck in the future. That's how I look at it. So that's how I reason it. Yeah, I've never heard that phrase, a stitch in time saves 9. Yeah, I see. You know, like if you put a stitch in it now, it's going to save it ripping further.
You save 9 in the future. Yeah.
Classic.
Okay, cool.
Great question. Thank you for the question, Rinrock1885. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. As we say, all different avenues to get that in. Maybe you want to hand us a question in person over the next 2 weeks between Auckland and Kansas. You can drop them in the YouTube comments below. Let us know it is a Commander Cookout question, just like Renrock did. You can email us arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can drop a question on the Spotify. Or actually, I missed this one. If you're an Arsenal Pass Patreon subscriber, you can go to the Arsenal Pass Discord and drop your question in the Discord channel there for the Commander Cookout questions. With that said, Pankaj, let's get on to the main topic of the pod. Not a particularly long main topic of the pod this week. It's a bit more of, I guess, an informative, maybe a little bit back and forth. We can chat through some things. I want to give a little bit of background on this how to qualify for the Pro Tour pod that I proposed to Pankaj, and he so gracefully said yes. All right, he had some questions, but he was like, let's do it. I'm keen to hear. Pro Tour London, Pankaj, was the biggest Pro Tour in Flesh and Blood history. Over 500 players. I think if I recall, 550 players close to?
It was 560. Like when we opened the stream, we said it was 560, but I think there was some drops or some no-shows or whatever. It ended up being like somewhere in the 540, 550 range.
Insane. Massive, right? To contrast, Singapore was still large, but it was 350 odd. In Singapore, we've had Pro Tours in the past have generally been around that sort of 300 to 400 mark, right? So Flesh and Blood play and Premier play continues to grow. Of course, we have more Battle Hardens this year than ever before. We've got callings in different regions of the world that we haven't had them before, including, of course, our first South American calling this year that has happened already. So it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And, you know, I think you called out about the PQ changes, but with the influx of players and the fact that there's not necessarily going to be much more invites on the table going forward, it's going to get harder and harder. The level of play is growing. It's going to get harder and harder to potentially secure that invite and find your way onto the coveted Pro Tour circuit. So what value, Pankaj, can we add and help you potentially break through for your first Pro Tour appearance or a return to the Pro Tour and stake your claim to some of that $1.5 million on offer at the World Tour next year and get yourself to maybe your first Tier 4 event or return to a Tier 4 event in the form of a Pro Tour or a World Championship? I want to quickly, Pankaj, as well, just recap for those listening the ways to qualify. If you're looking at how you're going to set yourself up over the coming months, of course, you've got the Tier 2 events are going to be your premier way to qualify yourself for the Pro Tour. That is first and foremost the ProQuest season, which is coming out for Yokohama through October. Each winner, of course, receiving a qualification to the PT for the season that it feeds from that ProQuest Yokohama for the season coming up. Battle Hardens as well. A lot more Battle Hardens being run all around the world. The winner and the runner-up both receive PT invites. This is important to remember. These are PTIs that are redeemable for any Tier 4 event. So a little bit more coveted than just the ProQuest winners. You can transfer these to a future Pro Tour. ProQuest Pluses, of course, we're seeing some of these as well. Nationals attached to Battle Hardens as well, where the winner gets a PTI. So it's a little bit like a ProQuest, except that it awards a PTI specifically as opposed to a ProQuest, a specific Pro Tour entry. And you can also, of course, nab some qualifications. A lot harder, I would say, at your Tier 3 events such as callings, where all of the top 8 will receive a PTI. And of course, PT, if you go to Pro Tour, maybe you make your first Pro Tour, you do well, you top 32 at that event, you're going to get an invite to the next Pro Tour for that the following Pro Tour as well, which of course for Yokohama would be the second Pro Tour of the year, which we still, as of yet, don't know where that is. So a great way to ride the gravy train, as it were. Have I caught all the ways to qualify for the Pro Tour, Pankaj?
I think so. I just want to emphasize a little bit about the difference between a Pro Tour invite and a PTI, just because I know that's tripped a lot of new players up before. So when you win a ProQuest and you get a Pro Tour invite, that is...
I would call it a Pro Tour qualification. You qualify for that Pro Tour. Maybe to just disseminate the two of them.
That makes sense. So when you win a ProQuest, you are qualified for that specific Pro Tour, which is the next one. We've never had a ProQuest season that qualifies you for a Pro Tour like 2 Pro Tours down, so it's always the next one. So this upcoming season, you'll qualify for Yokohama, specifically Yokohama. But if you win or get second place at a Battle Hardened, you get a PTI, which shows up in your gem profile. And, you know, as you rack up more and more PTIs, the number goes up. Say you have like, you know, players like Brody Spurlock, for example, have like 25 PTIs, for example. And it'll show up in a gem profile, and you can redeem that for any Tier 4 event. Or if your Nationals is an invite-only Nationals, then you can use that for that as well. So typically that's what a lot of people use for Worlds, because Worlds doesn't have a ProQuest season attached to it. The way you get to Worlds is by redeeming a PTI or by having high enough elo that you get automatically invited.
Or top 8.
So a lot of people save it for that. Yeah, I'll top 8 at nationals. So a lot of times people use a PTI for Worlds, but of course some also use it for Pro Tours if they didn't manage to win a ProQuest, because sometimes a ProQuest can be quite competitive. Yeah, like Hayden over here. You use that for Singapore? Use a PTI for Singapore?
I used PTI for Singapore.
Yeah. So basically, Battle Hardened, winner, runner up, and calling top 8s. These are PTIs. These are the redeemable ones. They stay on your profile forever. But when you win a ProQuest, you are only qualified for that specific Pro Tour that the ProQuest season is attached to.
Yes.
Just gotta clarify that. Yep.
Yeah, I think basically the easiest way to put it is you play a ProQuest, you're going to get yourself a qualification for the feeding Pro Tour. Anything else, apart from a Pro Tour top 32 as well, is going to award you a PTI.
Yeah.
Mostly.
And yeah, exactly. It's mostly, and then there's Nationals top 8, which just qualifies you to Worlds. It is kind of...
It's not super straightforward.
It's kind of... There are some exceptions, so I just feel it's important to clarify that.
I agree. That's why I think it's good we started with this, because it's not straightforward. And I think as well, you want to... So this is what I'm going to say, is if you are looking at... So this is okay, first part of my advice, I think, on this pod. If your goal is to play on the Pro Tour next year in some way, shape, or form, maybe it's to play one event, maybe it's to play multiple. Maybe your goal is, I want to be able to qualify for every single event next year. I want to get on the Pro Tour. I want to be a Pro Tour player next year. Then you... Depending what your goal is, like we say, if it's just play one or it's play the whole Pro Tour, your sort of calendar over the next 3 months might look quite different, right? So I think if you want to play on the Pro Tour, getting yourself at least one PTI in the bank is going to be very important, because it's going to make sure that you don't have to worry about all this pressure of potentially having to win a ProQuest or having to come X spot top 32 of a Pro Tour, top 8 nationals, whatever it is, to make sure that you can continue to achieve your goal next year and continue with your plans to play on the Pro Tour. So getting one of those PTIs might be a much higher priority if your goal is to play on the Pro Tour consistently, as opposed to just qualify for a Pro Tour. If you want to qualify for a Pro Tour, then I think you can set yourself up to play your ProQuest season, maybe go to a calling, maybe go to a battle hardened tier. But I would say, honestly, if you really want to make sure you can achieve your goal of being a Pro Tour player long term, or at least medium term, whatever it is, I think you need to try and bank yourself a PTI, and battle hardens and callings are the best way to do that. So your calendar might look more attuned to getting some travel, putting aside some funds, putting aside some time to be able to get to those events and really put in the effort. And we'll get more to what that looks like as we get into it, but just wanted to kind of point that out as well, is that because of the differences in the invites, your sort of schedule, your plans might look a little bit different depending on what your end goal is.
Yeah, that I definitely agree with that. Just having a PTI like on your profile, just exactly what you said, gives you some peace of mind that you will be able to play the Pro Tour. Like I think I used a PTI for Pro Tour Baltimore because I didn't manage to win a ProQuest that season. And it was just nice, I have the PTI there, so I'd be like, okay, I can use it in case the ProQuest season doesn't quite go my way. Because that can happen, right? There's tons of very strong players that don't manage to get an invite over ProQuest season. So definitely make it out to your battle hardens and callings to try and get a PTI and just like store that until you need it. Yeah,
I lost 2 finals and like 3 top 8s for Singapore, I think. 2 top 8s, 2 finals.
It happens.
Happens a lot. It just happens, right? You just sometimes it just isn't your season, right? And what I would say as well is that because the ProQuest season is often... So not for Yokohama, it's quite a bit of distance, but for Singapore, for instance, I mean, the ProQuest season was 12 weeks. I think it finished up 11 weeks before the event, Singapore. So there's not a lot of time. So if you want to be planning earlier, maybe you're planning with like a group or with friends or with a team, and people are booking before, even the ProQuest season has happened, because we know the Pro Tour. Like you could be booking for Yokohama right now, but the ProQuest season obviously isn't for another couple of months. Having that PTI in the bank, you just know that, okay, I'm going to go out. My goal is to win the ProQuest and get myself that qualification, to Pro Tour Yokohama. But if I don't, I've already got the PTI in the bank to set myself up to start next year in the right way, and I can focus on just right. I don't have to be worried about, I can't book my accommodation, or I can't book my flights. Like a flight deal comes up and a really great deal that I want to take so that I can get there in a nice, efficient financial way, but I don't have the invite yet. Well, if you have the PTI in the bank, you always have that to fall back on, which is quite nice.
Yep. Although I will say for that note specifically, I think traveling for these things to just play in the calling that's happening the same weekend is also totally viable. So
yeah.
You could totally still book all that and be like, hey, if you don't get the invite, you can go play the calling, which is still a lot of fun and could be a great use of your weekend there anyway.
Yeah, I think we'll reference this a bit later on in terms of maybe some of the do's and don'ts, I think. But I think if you're weighing up potentially going to play a calling and you want to do this in a financially sustainable way, and everyone has a different view, right? Some people, like for instance, for me, I treat going to these events as, like a bit of a holiday, a bit of like it's a focused trip. So, but I think if you want to do this long term, you do have to think about the financial sort of input that you're putting into this, or at least most people will need to, and I've definitely find myself in that position moving forward. I think you've got to think about that. So traveling to just a calling, as opposed to maybe you could do a calling that's say you're in North America, right? Do you want to travel to a calling internationally or a calling interstate, right, from a cost perspective? So yeah, but I agree, honestly, like if you can swing it, and maybe you're not going to play the Pro Tour, these callings at these events, especially if you're local, let's say you didn't qualify for Worlds, but you live in America, I massively recommend going and playing the calling in Philadelphia if you can, because the level of play, the experience that you'll get, these callings are kind of unmatched, honestly, I think, because the best players in the world are in the room. They've all traveled there to play the Pro Tour. Not all of them have made day 2, and a lot of them are going to be in the calling. So, I want to talk a bit about if your goal is to win a ProQuest in October for Yokohama. So maybe this is the first step in setting yourself up. What should you do to set yourself up? For that, get yourself in the best position to get your qualification and start your journey or continue your journey on the Pro Tour. You've got 8 weeks, Pankaj, right now until the start of the season. The season runs October 4th to November 9th. So actually, I guess, by the time this pod drops, it's 8 weeks, right? So I want to go through a few things. I thought I would just kind of read them off, get your thoughts, get your feedback. Maybe you agree, disagree. So I think start to think about right now, we sort of spoke about this already a little bit, but what does your calendar for Flesh and Blood look like in the coming 3 months? So start to think about which Battle Hardens you're going to go to, which Pro Quests, they're already starting to be put up online. If not, most of them are up online now. If you go to the Fab TCG event finder, you can go and start planning out what your Pro Quest weekends are going to look like. Maybe local travel to one that's a couple of hours away drive, planning that with friends, etc. Callings, which callings are you planning to go to? And I think do it all through the idea of what we spoke about before, what's your end goal? So potentially you might value Battle Hardens over a Pro Quest, for instance, if it's near you, because the PTI might mean more to you than just this specific qualification for that Pro Tour coming up. I think if your goal is to qualify for the Pro Tour, you're better off playing a better quality of an event than number. So what I mean by this is, if you are specifically prepared for what the meta looks like today, tomorrow, next week, go and play a Battle Hardened if it's near you. If you're not going to have as much time to prep for the start of ProQuest season, I think then traveling to some of those should be lower on your agenda, right? Like you should prep for the events that you're going to play. So the events that you feel that you're going to be able to be the most prepared for are the events you're going to do the best at. So those should take higher priority, I think is where I would start.
Yeah, I definitely echo that for sure. I think to put it another way, I feel like you're more likely to achieve the goal if you play like one event that you're really prepared for, rather than like 2 events that you're like
unprepared for,
like suboptimally prepared for. Is I think what you were trying to get at there. So,
that's a much better way of putting it.
I definitely agree with that.
And I've felt that, like personally, I've looked at a season, spread myself a little bit thin sometimes, reflected afterwards and been like, I probably should have just played one of those. For instance, maybe it's like, so actually that was part of the reason I didn't choose to play Nationals this year as well, is I didn't feel like I was quite ready for the constructed format. Like I've been playing limited, but I wasn't quite as ready for the constructed format. I wanted to focus on getting to Singapore and setting myself up in the best way there. So chose to not necessarily travel Nationals where I thought I wouldn't get the return because it wasn't one in my city. I'd have to travel for it. So I do think that is a real consideration. What I would say though is, if I was specifically trying to get my qualification, Nationals is still a really good way to do that, although it's a lot harder. It's only the world's qualification for the top 8, top 4 in some countries, so it's difficult, right? So you might value, for instance, calling a Battle Hardened over that.
Yeah, and also depending which country you're in, like you're probably maybe not even planning to come all the way to Philadelphia, which happens a lot for ProQuest season as well, right? You see that happen in finals constantly, where people are like, I'm not planning to go to Singapore anyway, so their goal isn't exactly to win the ProQuest. But when it comes to like a Battle Hardened or something where that invite is redeemable for whatever you want, then yeah, maybe that should be a priority.
I love that. I love that. If you're not planning to go to Yokohama for PT1 next year, but you are planning to probably go to PT2, wherever it is, because it's probably just going to work out better for you, it's probably going to be in Europe or North America, right? So if that's a one that you're sort of targeting for PT2 next year, then playing ProQuest season in Yokohama, probably very low on your list, right, for your goals. But attending Battle Hardens and being prepared for a Battle Harden, very high on your list, right, to get that PTI. So yeah, love that Pankaj.
Yep. Probably, I want to say Pro Tour 2 is next year is probably going to be US, right? Because we had Worlds in Japan last year and Worlds in the US this year. So I feel like Worlds next year should be Europe, which tells me Pro Tour 2 should be in the US. It's kind of my guess, the way I'm trying to project it. But who knows? Who knows what they're doing?
I think that's a good guess. Start to get prepared for what the meta will look like and narrow down what you'll play. So despite the fact that we've still got Super Slam to come, Mastery Pack Guardian hitting shelves, and your local events and non-local events to watch on streaming this coming weekend, when it comes to qualifying and at the tier 2 level, you will have a better chance if you play a hero that you are well versed and comfortable with. I think there's some exceptions to this, like for instance picking up a deck like Aurora a week before might be easier than picking up Gravy, for instance, is what I'm trying to get at. So start to get comfortable, understand the meta in terms of, let's be honest, if nothing happens with BNR, Gravy is still going to be a tier 1 deck. Slippy still looks like it's probably going to be a tier 1 deck. So I think there's heroes in that tier 2 space that are very powerful that could still end up being strong decks. But do you want to be spending your time on those when you could be learning potentially a tier 1 hero right now and set yourself up for seeing Super Slam come in and then adjusting? Because if you sort of spread yourself really wide over the next few weeks, maybe I start trying to play some Dash IO, I start trying to play Vinset, is that really the best use of your time if your goal is to win a qualification or a PTI in this upcoming season? Personally, I would say not. So I think start to really understand what the meta might look like. But what you can say is start with the more sure bets now is where I would put my effort and time.
So that's where, at least for me personally, the way I approach the game, I maybe push back a little bit. I do focus a little bit more on the deck that I'm going to enjoy playing, because I think a big thing about these Battle Hardens and these Pro Quests is that they are long days. They're like a Pro Quest, at least in my region, they're always like 5 to 6 rounds, most of the time 6. You're playing Battle Hardens and it's be like 7-8 rounds of Battle Hardened, and I've had the experience before where I brought a deck that I thought was well positioned, but I simply just did not enjoy. And because of that definitely limited my performance on it. So I've definitely shifted my focus a little bit more towards not just like what is tier 1, but what is in definitely an upper echelon deck. Like I'm not going to bring I'm not going to bring something that's, I'm not going to bring Betsy, for example, even if I might enjoy Betsy. I'm going to bring something that's playable, but I also assign quite a bit of factor to the deck that I enjoy. So I would add that to this evaluation of for which deck you should start preparing for.
Yeah, look, I do think it is valid. I think if I'm going to be brutally honest with people out there, I think that if you want the best chance to qualify for the Pro Tour, you should play one of the best decks. I think that, broadly speaking, I think that is the advice I would give to the mass. I think there's going to be very specific times where I agree. I think for someone it just might not work out, right? And that's fine. But I will say that you are hurting your ability to qualify, if that's the case.
Well, yeah, I guess that's where I'll push back, because I'll be like, if I try to pick up Gravy, for example, I'll be hurting my chance to qualify.
You got 8 weeks though, but you've got 8 weeks.
It doesn't matter because I don't enjoy it, because I'm going to show up on the day and play like 7 rounds of Gravy and realize I just don't enjoy the deck. And then that'll hurt my chance of qualifying. And I think that's probably somewhere a little bit, like maybe where we a little bit differ in the way we approach the game. I've definitely, I do play the game maybe a little bit more emotionally potentially, where it's like when I'm enjoying my hero, I'm really like feeling it, and it definitely translates into a better performance. Which is why when you say that if you don't play the best deck, you're hurting yourself, I'm like, I think it kind of depends on the sort of player you are and the way you approach the game. There's some players where it's like they're hurting themselves unless they built the deck themselves from scratch. Like I think of Naib, for example, and like the sort of list like he creates every time.
Sure.
It's like, I do feel like he's the sort of player where if you just give him a net deck, I don't think he's going to perform as well as he does. But when he gets to make his own deck, then he's actually performing well. So I will say there is a little bit of an asterisk. I do agree with you that to the masses, just play the best deck. Just net deck the best deck. Go play that. But I think there is a subset of players where you do need to enjoy the deck you're playing, and the level at which you're able to perform on the deck is either is a function of whether you created it yourself and so you fully know exactly what everything's doing, or that you are just enjoying it and you kind of just are happier and play better because of that.
Yeah, I'm going to be brutally honest. I think honestly, if you're listening to this, 9 out of 10, if not actually 99 out of 100 people, you're not that person. You are not the individual that Pankaj is talking about. Don't waste your time. It's not going to be worth it. If you're and I'm just, again, honestly for people, if your goal is to win a pro quest, you just by sheer numbers, and if you don't enjoy playing that deck, I don't know. I think the best advice I can give you is, if your number one goal is to get the qualification, then what you need to overcome is not enjoying playing that deck, to be honest, because that's my opinion. I think that for players, unless you are one of the best players in the world, and even if you're one of the best players in the world, I think not playing one of the best decks is just doing yourself a disservice, but especially if you're not one of the best players in the world. They can afford to at least give up some edge, to be honest.
Yeah, but I also think going there and being miserable for the 6 rounds you're going to be playing is also doing yourself a disservice.
I don't disagree, but my thing is you need to get over that then. That's my advice to people, is try and get over it, honestly.
I'm going to say know what sort of player you are.
Yeah, sure.
And if you are the sort of player that I'm describing, then don't follow the advice that's meant for the masses, obviously. But yeah, if you're not sure, then yeah, just do what Hayden's saying, which is go play one of the best decks.
I think my problem is going to be that more people are going to think they're that player than are really that player. Like not everyone's naive. And I honestly, I've never actually seen Naib play, but I'm also going to throw out something. Shout out to you, Naib. I don't know you, but I'm going to say probably if Naib just played the best deck, that'd probably win more events. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess so. Where I'm coming from is because I have done the thing. I played Pro Tour New Jersey on a deck I did not enjoy.
Yeah.
And when I say that, when I'm giving like my side of the coin here, it's coming from personal experience.
Fair.
Where, like I said, like before the event, I didn't know what sort of player I was, right? So I was like, cool, I'm just gonna play the thing that I think is best positioned. Yeah, and I played it, and I was like, damn, I just don't enjoy this deck, and I can tell I'm not playing as well as I can be because I'm miserable. And so it's stemming from that. So if you know that you're the sort of player, then the advice for the masses doesn't fully apply.
Okay.
So for example, the advice that you're suggesting does not apply to me because I would not show up on Gravy and perform better than if I showed up on like Marlin, for example, even though Marlin's definitely worse.
Yeah.
Is like my take.
Okay, so if you're a Pankaj or you're a Naib, maybe this advice isn't for you. But if your names are not Pankaj or Naib, or whatever,
there are more players like that. there are a lot more players. I think of other players on the team as well, where their enjoyment in the deck definitely matters.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll agree to disagree on that one. I think my advice: play a tier 1 or tier 1.5 deck always.
Wait, I'm not sure if we're disagreeing though, because you did say if you are that sort of player, then go. Then definitely it's a factor. I'm not saying it's the only thing that matters. Like I said, don't play Betsy just because you enjoy her. There's obviously some level. Yeah, definitely play the thing that's the better deck. But
so
take into account your enjoyment. If you are that kind of player.
Sure. Yeah. Understand the current tier 1 decks though. That is what I think we need to be doing in this time frame as well. You got 8 weeks out. Pick up a Gravy, pick up a Slippy. Maybe you don't enjoy one, to Pankaj's point. That's fine. There's another tier 1 deck out there for you. I think if none of these tier 1 or tier 1.5 decks tickle your fancy, I don't know. Try and find something else, to Pankaj's point, or take the season off. Maybe that's the approach.
I mean, I think there's also a lot to be said about trying to find a unique angle, right? I mean, like if everyone just followed the advice of play the tier 1 or tier 1.5 deck, we wouldn't have had Shoma winning Amsterdam and Missouri, right? For example, like that's someone innovating and finding a unique angle into a format and succeeding with it. And if you're not vibing with the tier 1 1.5 decks, then I think you can absolutely try and take the angle of finding take the stance of finding a unique angle into a format. I mean, you yourself, right? You played Dash during Zen Meta because you thought that was like a unique angle. You know, you yourself didn't like just play the tier 1 or 1.5 deck for your nationals.
Yep.
You played Dash because you're like, this is my unique angle.
But I've also gone through a lot of instances where I've tried to do that and not found the deck and ended up in shambles for an event. And actually, this is a great segue to probably a point that I really want to drive home, which is for the majority of people out there, they are not Shoma Yamamura. They are not Pablo Pintor, right? Like, if you just want the straight up best chance, to give yourself the best chance, do not waste your time on trying to be the hero, everyone wants to be Shoma, right? Everyone wants to find the deck that's going to be that magic that bit of magic that's going to defy the odds, is going to be the thing that people didn't expect. It is so hard to find that thing in this game. There are the best players in the world innovating, and not being able to find these things. So it is very, very difficult. I think if that is what brings you passion and joy, go ahead, spend your time in doing that. If your goal is to get your qualification for the Pro Tour, do not spend your time doing that. That is going to be, honestly, I've done it before, it's going to be a waste of your time. So yes, I'm sure there's 1 or 2% of people who might want to spend their time that way, and that is brilliant. I think, part of this game is doing what you love, innovating, and spending time out there. But if you want the best return on your time and the best chance to go out there and get your, punch your ticket to the Pro Tour, I very firmly would say do not be spending your time brewing and trying to find things. It's not going to work out for 99% of the time the way that you want it to work out. And that is speaking from experience.
That's fair. It's just so interesting because that's to me why I play the game. Like brewing is deck building is my greatest joy, like in the game, like more so than like playing itself. I just love the brewing and theory crafting aspect of it. So it's exactly why I play the game. But yes, I do agree with you that when it comes, like I do that as my time, but then it's like when it comes to actually playing the event, there hasn't been that many times I actually just brought my weird brew and tried to like qualify on an event, like on the back of it. Like for example, I managed to get 1 gold foil for ProQuest season in Singapore, and that was back on like normal new, just regular new. I think I like some of my stuff on it, but because I couldn't find the brew. So I do agree with you. It's unlikely that you'll find the brew, but I would encourage you to continue brewing if that is something you enjoy, because it's never stopped me. I'll go and brew. I'll brew the Mark Nu. I'll brew the Marlin, but that's me having fun. That is what I find fun. Whether I actually show up to something I'm trying to qualify it with it definitely depends. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think if you've got, say, you've got 8 weeks, right? Say you map it out and you've got 60, 70 hours of total testing time or play time. My advice would be just how do you want to spend that time? Do you want to spend 60 hours of that time learning a potential hero that you're going to play inside and out, knowing all your matchups, knowing what that hero and deck does? Or do you want to spend 30 hours doing that while you spend another 40 hours potentially on a deck that you're just not going to play? And I think that's kind of what I'm getting to, is I think for most people it's going to be best served if you want to get that qualification to use your time as efficiently as possible. But if you want to brew and you want to spend your time doing that, I think, go for it.
A fair amount of it is also just hindsight, right? In a sense, where it's like, okay, you look back and you're like, oh, it didn't turn out, so then the 40 hours were wasted. Like, I guess, like it did. That
happens more often than not, though. That happens almost every single time. That's kind of my point. Like, I've done this for many Pro Tours where you test, you try and find a unique angle, and then you end up on Arachne slips through the cracks, you end up on Aurora, you end up on Enigma, and then you look back and you're like, I lost a match where I didn't understand that matchup, and I think that if I had just been, and to your point, it is hindsight, but hindsight lets you learn, right? It teaches you things. You can learn about things that you might want to do better next time. And I'm still a sucker for this, of still being like, this dash IE playable for this Pro Tour. I mean, not anymore. I can't do that anymore. Can't fall into that trap. But, spending 10 hours on that and then eventually getting to the event and being like, if I just arrived at my choice 10 hours earlier, I might have been able to solve this little thing or this small thing or understood this matchup more. So that's the personal approach I take, and that's the kind of advice that I would give out.
I suppose. So does that mean, I don't know, so did you stop brewing now? Like,
no, I will not stop brewing, but I'm also not trying to get my qualification for a Pro Tour.
I see. Okay. Oh, that's fair.
I would start to turn the attention to what's happening with Mastery Pack and Super Slam. So we're going to start to see things unfold. And I would say don't necessarily pivot early and again, waste time with experimenting if it doesn't look like it's going to be a sure thing. So I think, when we saw Zen for the first time, when we saw Syndra for the first time, when for instance, way back in the day, saw Chain for the first time, very clear these heroes are very powerful. And I think it was very reasonable
actually, for Zen, it wasn't. Right? Okay. Like, when Zen first came out, everyone was like, wait, guys, why is this deck so bad? Because they were trying to do Tiger stuff.
Sure. Some people were.
All right, okay. Cool.
I think if you can identify a thing that looks quite powerful, it's worth spending your time on it. If you can't, to that point, maybe you don't see the value in Zen. Don't be spending your time on it, right? Wait until one of the best players in the world puts out a deck, or someone puts out an article, or a battle hardened happens, or a calling happens, and you start to see the first seeds of what that sort of powerful thing could be. Then I think you've got a lot more reason to pivot over and give that a go. But if you know, for instance, I think when Acilio was previewed, if people started spending their time on Acilio and they were like, I'm getting ready to play Acilio for my ProQuest season, and I asked them what their goal was, and they said to win a ProQuest, I'd be like, I'm not sure you're spending your time in the right way, to be honest, if that's your goal. But I think there are some surefire things. I think, you know, people picked up Syndra very early and were rewarded at the start of that season, just for how straightforward and how powerful that hero could be.
Well, I think Syndra was another example where I think the community sentiment on Syndra was actually pretty low. And it was the people like innovating on her that actually managed to go and win the callings, the first 2 callings after she came out, right? Which is where I sort of pushed back against what you're saying a little bit. Where when Syndra was first spoiled, a lot of people were trying to play blues, and I can probably pull up some tweets. I remember some people making tweets being like, I don't understand Syndra, like this hero seems really weak. And it was only after the first calling happened and Syndra won, where people are like, oh, you're actually just supposed to go full red line and then just use flick knives and blood spattered vest for it. So I do think there is value in diving deep into something, but it is a risk. I think maybe where we can perhaps find a middle ground here is that know that every time you try and brew something that hasn't been tested, where there isn't a result on this hero, there's no calling or battle hardened data you can look at to see where this hero lands and how strong they are. You are taking a risk. You're taking a risk in terms of your time, which could be better spent actually just focusing on a thing that you know is tier 1, rather than going into this experimental phase. But there are times, and we've seen this in Flesh and Blood's past, where that risk does pay off. So it's about how you approach the game and whether you want to take that risk or whether you want to take the thing that's more surefire. And to your point, I will agree, the one that's more likely to, for the masses, get you that qualification. But there are times in the past, like that calling was one, and we saw games on stream where opponents did not know how to deal with it because it was so new, and people perhaps were, when they're testing leading up to it, were playing against builds of Syndra that weren't that. And so if you are the person that gets to show up on a unique build that is new and powerful, then you probably have a very easy way to victory, but getting that is a low chance. So you're taking a risk trying to build on that when you could be instead focusing on a whole bunch of matchups that you haven't learned yet on a deck that is actually tier 1.
Yeah, I mean, that last part I very much agree with. Don't waste your time, basically. Once Super Slam is out, I think it's the right time to turn the attention to focus testing, learning matchups, building your sideboard plans, solving those 50-50s, trying to turn them into 60-40s, and getting your plans for bad matchups. Quality reps will always directly correlate with your chances. It is that simple. Wide testing, unfocused testing will not yield you great results. If you are focused with your testing, it's always going to be quality over quantity. So be really focused in your testing. Start to focus in on the key decks of the format, the key matchups. Learn those first. Spend the time there. If you can be targeted for your testing before your events, stay consistent, stay focused, you will get the most out of it. So yeah, to your point, Pankaj, maybe you haven't seen what a Zen or a Syndra could be yet. Maybe it shows up in the first battle hardened, you want to jump on it and then test the heck out of it, learn everything you can, or you just have stuck to your Gravy Bones or your Slippy, whatever it is, and you've been turning those 50-50s into 60-40s, honing your plans and just getting an edge by just knowing more about the matchup than when you sit down against your opponent at your ProQuest.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the quality a little bit as well. It's more than just getting reps into the meta heroes. It's also the players who you're playing across. And for that reason, like, I'm not someone who really jams a lot of random games on Talishar. Like, I'm of the opinion that I'd much rather just get 2 games with someone on the team or a local of mine who are like I know is good, rather than jam like 5 games on Talishar. And if I'm still needing like more reps, I'd rather go look at a replay. Like, I definitely encourage people to go record your games as well. And I'd rather go look at my own replay of a game that I played rather than get more just random reps. Because the random reps, I feel like a lot of times you actually learn bad habits too from random reps where you're like, oh wait, this card's really good here. Or this hero's really good into this hero, but that's just because you're playing against someone who doesn't know their side of the matchup. And so for that reason, quality reps is more than just the hero you're playing against, but also the player.
Yeah, I massively agree. Lastly, just some don'ts and do's, or do's and don'ts when it comes to achieving your goals. I would say, for this ProQuest season or this upcoming year of the World Tour and trying to get the most out of it from yourself. Don't be tempted and pivot late unless you have experience and time on the deck and it is properly busted. I would say that if you've been putting in the reps, you've been putting in the testing, week of, don't be tempted to change out because you've seen something put up a result at the previous week's Battle Hardened. People will still try and respond to it. If you don't have the reps on the hero, don't pick up Gravy Bones the week before. It's not going to go well for you. I would say we spoke about this earlier, but don't waste your time traveling to an event if you aren't prepped with the deck that you want to play, unless it's basically free. I'd say invest your resources elsewhere. Do support your local events, get to those, learn as much as possible. But if you're weighing up between traveling and putting more expense and resources into a further away event where you have maybe a closer event in an upcoming week, maybe focus on that, get your testing sorted for that as opposed to putting your resources into that travel and time. Don't change cards and plans last minute without testing. I think that's a mistake I see a lot of developing players make time and time again and getting caught out for it time and time again, not understanding the interactions between these cards, not understanding how they impact the overall fluidity and synergy of their deck by putting these cards into it for particular matchups, all these sorts of things. Putting tech in for a matchup untested.
Not understanding ratios for me is the big one. Someone's like, oh, well, I'm going to add the 3 7s for Prism, and then they cut a card that's like, and the whole ratio is just absolutely messed up because of it. I think an assassin, what happens a lot, I'm going to add more blues for like just Nick targets and stuff like that, and then it's all like they take out, they add more just Nicks but then they don't add the requisite number of like blue ones, like the targets for it. Basically, like when you're like net decking something, like a deck that has like won an event, the ratios are generally quite.
Yeah, they're probably going to be quite
they've been
well
figured
tested.
out. Yeah, they've been figured out. Like the whole resource base, and it's not just resource base, right? The resource base is the most, it's like like sort of the level 1 when you think about a ratio of a deck. But there is, depending on a deck, a whole bunch of deck-specific class of cards. So if you're, say, looking at a ninja, there's like the starters and the finishes alongside the resource cards if you're a ninja that, plays, say, the Ira. So you have like the starters, you have the disruption, you have the chain enders, and then you have your extenders and stuff like that. So when you just like when you last minute just cut cards without testing, you are affecting all these ratios in ways that you aren't fully understanding right now. And so I definitely agree to your point, Hayden, that you just you have to trust the ratios to some extent, and only if you really know exactly how the change you're making is affecting your ratios, then you go ahead and do it. But otherwise, there's these ripple effects that you don't feel until you actually start playing, and then you're like, oh my god, I messed up my deck by making this last minute change because it messed up this ratio. I didn't fully understand it.
There's a lot of art and science to deck building, that's for sure. Don't lose around and give up. And if you lose early, keep playing to learn and develop ready for the next weekend. So maybe you've picked up a hero, you've been learning it inside and out, you've been sort of testing a lot. Maybe the first couple of rounds of the first ProQuest don't go your way. I think play out the rest of the ProQuest. Learn, get that competitive sort of gameplay under your belt. Those hours, I think, always, like, there's nothing that replaces high-level games of Flesh and Blood, even testing, right? So I think often my advice would be keep playing. Don't take for gospel what you hear on videos, podcasts, including this podcast, right? We even me and Pankaj disagree, right? What you read on Discord, test things for yourself, validate them, and understand. People have all sorts of opinions based on specific testing, in-house testing. For example, a particular player might play a specific strategy that could completely throw out a result contrary to what 80% of everyone else finds. So do validate, do listen, and take it as a data point, in fact, how important it is to the bigger picture. I'll give an example. At the World Championships in Osaka last year, we were being told time and time again, Dash.io was favored into all versions of Enigma. We tested the theory over and over again with different strategies and found that CYB Enigma was heavily, heavily favored into Dash.io. We stress tested it multiple days in a row and tried out the plans that we heard others were enacting, and we just overcame them every single time. So yes, we took a data point, we heard what others were saying, and we found that the way that we were playing and what we were able to validate, it just wasn't the case. So it's more important to understand a concept as opposed to just be aware of particular wide concepts and just try and recreate them or follow them. I think understanding these concepts is just so much more important.
Completely agree. I mean, I feel like that reminds me of something that happened just this past Pro Tour where our team thought there was a deck that was very favored into Gravy, and then internally it was like, oh yeah, this is a favorite into Gravy, and we played against like one external Gravy who was a good player, and It was just a small difference where they actually brought in Swabby, like the Gravy actually brought in Swabby, and then suddenly it's like, wait, this matchup actually isn't that favored. Definitely agree with you. Validated testing against different types of strategies.
Yeah. A few do have contingencies to change cards or strategies or even the hero or deck if the meta becomes unfavorable for your current plan. So this is, why you have the 8 weeks of prep and aren't wasting time on Kano. Not any other deck in particular. Go to events to win with that mindset. Play to win, I think. If you're not going to an event, if your goal is to qualify and you're going to an event to just play, maybe you could spend that time testing. Or it's always great to support local, support your friends, these sorts of things. Go and play events, right? It's always great to be playing Flesh and Blood. But again, if your goal is to, number one, get that qualification for the Pro Tour, I think your number one mindset and approach has to always be go to your event to win the events or to win your qualification.
Okay. One moment, I'm gonna go back a little bit on the first point and say don't waste time like practicing Kano. I feel like Kano is one of those heroes that if you're a Kano player, you should always be like, do a little gut check on the hero, like every now and then come back to it, check out where the cultural sine wave of Kano respect is. And if the Kano respect is going down, you absolutely can bring Kano.
Sure.
But it's I feel like what I would put as an example in that is like, don't bother testing this thing. I would be like, don't bother like testing like the Betsy or like the Tekla Vossen, where it's just like the deck just isn't powerful. So like there's no point wasting time testing it. But stuff like Kano, where I feel like Kano's very much a hero where it's like, oh, there could suddenly be a very strategic point in the meta where this hero is absolutely legit, and I think having him in the back pocket is actually potentially quite useful. But that is
okay. I'll put it this way: if you've never played Kano before, don't pick it up now. Now's not the time to be doing it 8 weeks out from an event to.
That's what you mean. Yes.
Punch your ticket. There you
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yes, that makes sense.
Do play tight. Do stay focused. Be nice. Be fair. First and foremost, this is great sportsmanship, and Flesh and Blood is what so many of us love about this game. But do remember, it's not an armory, right? And remember your triggers. If you're ever unsure, call a judge. It's my advice. Always call a judge if unsure.
And on that point, I'm gonna say, as much as you can, like at least the week leading up to it, at least that 1 week leading up to it, go play the deck you're gonna play in paper. These days we do a lot of practice on Talishar, and that's fine. You get just sheer number of reps when you play on Talishar, which is obviously very useful. Easier to record, easier to look back, easier to discuss lines, stream to your friends on Discord.
Yep.
All good. But when you're actually preparing to go play in like a ProQuest or a Battle or whatever, make sure you have like a bunch of paper reps. Because to your point, Hayden, you will forget your triggers. Like Talishar remembers all your triggers for you, remembers your tunic for you. You need to get that muscle memory in paper because, as stuff like ProQuest, Battle Harden's Callings, you're not necessarily always getting those triggers back when you forget them, right? So get the paper reps.
Yeah. Nothing replaces them, honestly. They're just so valuable. Do look at your local meta and think about what that means versus the wider picture of the global meta and what you're seeing from all these Battle Hardens, Callings, events. You know your local meta better than anyone else, right? And if you're playing local ProQuest, you're probably going to have an idea of what some of the best players are playing and thinking about what that might mean for... don't overreact, I think, is one thing I'd say to our earlier point about changing cards and ruining ratios and playing things untested. But do have a bit of an eye of maybe you're between two decks and you think one of them has a better matchup spread into what your local ProQuest is probably doing. Might be better to go with that one, for instance. Do have all your event... Oh, sorry.
You might know what some of the stronger players are on, for example. And if you're like, say you've got your deck ready, but you've got your last few sideboard slots and you're not sure where to dedicate those sideboard slots, that's where you can be like, okay, I know that strong player who, if I want to win this ProQuest, almost certainly will have to beat probably somewhere in the top 8. You can probably... give more respect to that player and like maybe dedicate a few more cyber slots to that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think it's just as long as you're not doing the expensive things that you haven't tested. But if you've got like, I've tested these two things, I could play either one to that point. Yeah.
It's also like when you're like, man, I only have 2 slots left. Do I dedicate these slots like Prism or do I dedicate them to Kano? Like, for example, right? And like, okay, I know that strong player who wins like a ProQuest every season here like is going to be bringing Kano, then okay, cool, then you go respect the Kano instead of Prism, for example. Or if there's no Kanos in your area, then you can just maybe take a little bit of a risk and actually not have any like spell void in your sideboard, for example. I know people have done that before.
Disrespect them. Why not? Do have all your event prep done in advance. Have your deck list ready. Have your snacks and water ready to go. Have new sleeves ready to go so that you're not caught out with marked sleeves or anything like that. Do have your dice, your life pad, your pens and tokens all ready to go, set up. And do, of course, listen to Arsenal Pass and stay in tune with the meta.
And speaking of event prep, something that I feel like I still don't see a lot of people do is have your sideboards ready.
Yep, notes.
Like, I think dedicating mental bandwidth on the day of, like say it's round 4 or something, you've already played like 3 games of Flesh and Blood. Round 4, you sit across like some like a Marinette or something where it's like not obviously your tier 1 decks that you've been playing against. You probably have your sideboards figured out for them like a long time ago. But like when you play against like something that's maybe tier 1.5 or tier 2, you like play against like the Marinette or the Victor, where it's like it's a decent chance you do play against a deck like this, but you don't want to dedicate mental bandwidth 100%. There in the middle of the day to like figuring out what you want there. So go have your sideboards ready beforehand, printed out with your deck list. Just take that load off your brain, and it actually does make a difference.
1000% agree. Yep, big fan. Always, never expend mental energy that you don't need to outside of the game. It is a waste of your resource. So, what next? To wrap it up, get prepared, make a list, set up your calendar or your event schedule for the coming months. Formulate your plans. How are you going to progress through your testing? Make sure that you're set up in the best way possible when you get to that first week of the ProQuest or the Battle Hardened that you're going to. Begin focus testing. Find a deck or 2 max. Do not spread yourself too thin. On things. Keep watching the discourse on new heroes and adapt sensibly, like we spoke about. I'm just going to end with this from my standpoint. Again, I think unless you are the 1%, and most people are not the 1%, hence given the 1%, play a top deck. We all want to be, as I say, the hero, be the thing that stories are made of. But what's the stories you don't hear about is all the people that show up to the Pro Tour with their Valda, their Teklevossen, their Vincent, all these different things, and end up playing the Calling the next day, or playing a Battle Hardened, or just hanging out after round 3 at their ProQuest because they find themselves 0-3. So if you want my just top tip, if your number 1 goal is just secure that invite and you feel that you are just sort of, maybe the average competitive grinder Flesh and Blood player, just play one of the best decks. Unless, of course, you have a crystal ball, and then, play the best meta pick, I guess.
I'd give a little bit of leeway to play the thing. You give some time to brewing if you're that sort of player. And if the best deck, if one of the top decks isn't something you enjoy, again, I will say, I think it's more important you play something you enjoy. But I think on that one, we can agree to disagree.
This is why you're on the pod.
Also, in terms of getting prepared, tune into the competitive scene. So yeah, we go over like the meta like every week or results of past events, but definitely tune into coverage. For example, I'm going to be glued to the screen for day 2 for the CC part of calling Auckland for sure, because I'm going to look at how the meta is adjusting as I prepare for Kansas, for example. So definitely be doing that. We have streams happening like very, very often now, which is awesome. Shout out coverage team for doing that. Shout out LSS for making the streams happen. Definitely use them as a resource and tune in, not just to like just the top 8 or just the meta, but I feel like there's a lot of value in also just watching the games and seeing how they play out, like the Swiss games as well.
Yeah, agree, definitely. Wow. Thank you very much. That is episode 225 Arsenal Pass. Yeah, like you say, calling Auckland this coming weekend, calling Kansas next weekend. Mastery Pack Guardian is out basically as of tomorrow when this pod drops. I'm interested to see what impact Belder might have, what impact some of these Guardians will have with these other cards. There's, of course, a few generic cards out there, which are quite interesting. And Super Slam is now not far away. I mean, we're 5 weeks away from World Premiere in Montreal. Looking forward to seeing what impact that might have on the meta. So until next week, we'll see you in the next episode.